illness really is it's a dual condition because it affects our health and it affects our mental well-being. So it can be diagnosed by a mental health professional or by a medical professional because it affects both things. Mental illness affects how we think, feel, and behave. It can affect one of those areas or multiple areas. But if you think about how you feel, when you feel a certain way, you behave a certain way. When you think a certain way, you feel a certain way. So even though the mental illness may only touch one of those areas, it impacts all three. And how we think, feel, and behave impacts how we interact with one another. It impacts how we're able to do our daily function, how we do our work. It impacts just how we feel. If we feel calm or feel distressed or in crisis. So it encompasses everything about us internally and externally. 1 in 4 adults suffer from mental illness in their lifetime, diagnosably. The interesting thing is that that statistic is really no different for you all as pastors, and with some diagnoses is actually higher. So when we look at depression, for those who are in your field, it is a higher rate of depression than the general population. So I always tell people when I say the 1 in 4 statistic, kind of look around, guesstimate how many people are in this room. In this room, there are people that are struggling with mental health, even more so than the 1 in 4 that is common in the U.S. population. So it's even more important that you think about your own mental health. What impacts that, or what increases that number for pastors and for a lot of mental health professionals? Well, A, the constant caregiving that I was talking about, but B, also your workload. I hear pastors often talk about they do everything from weddings to funerals, baptisms, they are visiting the sick and shut-in, they are caring for people in a variety of ways, praying for people, and all the things that they have going on in their life, on top of the responsibility of running a church and being responsible for a Sunday service and finances and all the things that go into making sure your church is run well and the gospel is being shared at your church. So that workload is not a Monday through Friday, 8 to 5, where other people get to come home at 5 o'clock and be done with the work that they do. That's not the calling that you all have, and that's not what your lives look like. So the extra workload adds to how it impacts you mentally. Then the mental load, when you think about going to visit people at the hospital or caring for people in a variety of ways, when you're done with that visit, you don't just let all of that fade away. You carry those things with you emotionally and mentally. And at 5 o'clock, again, it doesn't just go away. Those are not things like in other professions where you can put down and then pick up tomorrow morning when you get to work. So the mental workload that comes with your calling also impacts your mental health and raises the rate of probability for you to experience mental illness. The last thing that is different for your profession, which I also feel in my profession, is sometimes a sense of loneliness. What you do is different than what everyone else does. What I do is different than what other people do. There's also the confounds of the confidentiality, the things that you just can't go home and share with your spouses. And the conversation that I have with my husband about how your day is much different because he can tell me all about his day. And there are so many things that I can't tell him about my day, which goes back to the mental load that I'm carrying, that I don't have anyone, even in my spouse, to share that with because I have to keep these things confidential and you all have to keep these things confidential. So those three things make the 1 in 4 number from the general population a little higher. So what do? How do you care for yourselves? Well, first of all, you need to know the signs. Those big flashing warning signs that sometimes we pass by, or sometimes even for myself, like I said, when I was doing this, I realized that I need to go back to my own self-care. We think about in other people, but we forget to look at in ourselves. Our work-life balance. Maybe I'll send this out because my PowerPoint's not, we weren't able to get it up, but it's a picture of a balance beam with all the things that you have in your life. And if you look at your schedule over the week, if you were to color code it, would there be an excess of one color and would one thing be missing? So on those things is your family, your me time, the work that you do in your ministry, your physical health and taking care of yourself, if those things were color-coded, would there be something that looks much brighter and more prevalent than other things? Typically, the thing that is the smallest on those balance beams, on those calendars, is the time that you spend with yourself. The time that you take care of yourself, the time that you do the things that you love. And for most of us, one thing that we really love is caring for other people. But one thing that I tell my athletes is when you were younger and you were playing sports, it was your hobby, you loved it. But once you get to collegiate sports, it's now your job. So some of the things that we love to do, even when you think about ministers of music, right? You love to play music, you love to sing, but that is now a part of your occupation. And so you might not be getting the same feeling that you got when it was not your job. So thinking about how you spend that time by yourself and not by yourself planning for what you're going to do for someone else. Just doing whatever it is that you love to do. We experience a lot of times a secondary traumatization by hearing everyone's stories of what they're going through that we carry with us, and we feel that anxiety, we feel that trauma. Sometimes we experience what's called compassion fatigue, where we've cared for other people, we've given all this love and all this support to other people that we just kind of don't have any more left. I know that sometimes when I get off and my friends call me and they're like, I just need to tell you about my day, and I'm like, I just don't have it in me right now. I just can't hear about it, and unless I'm going to charge you for this phone call, like I just can't do it right now. Like I don't want to be a bad friend, but everything that I've taken in, I just don't have any more to give. And you always see the pictures of the empty cup, and you can't pour from an empty cup, and oftentimes that's where we are, but we don't know the signs of those things. I tell people the easiest way to notice that something is happening, something maybe is a little off kilter with yourself, is look at the change in yourself. The 4 things that I always tell people to look for are 1, the change in your interests. So the things that you do love to do, the things that give you so much joy, either they don't give you the same joy anymore, or when there's an opportunity to do it, you don't take it, or you just don't, you put it on the back burner, it just doesn't seem important to you anymore. Those things that we love, when we don't love them anymore, they don't feel the same for us anymore, that's a red flag. That's a sign that we need to think about what we're experiencing, what's going on with us, what's happening with our mental health. The other thing is the change in our mood. That compassion fatigue shows up, or you find yourself blowing up on your kids when, you know, maybe that's not normally how you do. Hopefully that's not normally how you do. But, you know, little Johnny's drawing on the wall with crayon, and normally you're pretty calm, but you find yourself yelling. Or you're just not invested at all. You're like, I don't care, draw on all the walls. I just really don't care. So that normal pace of your mood, how you normally interact with people, it has changed. Either you're not invested, or you're angry, or maybe everything makes you a little more upset, or a little more irritable, or a little more on edge. The other thing is what we're doing right now, our appetite. When you have a change in your appetite, you notice weight loss or gain that wasn't intentional, those are also signs of mental health. And this is where where I talked about mental illness and our physical health are very closely tied. A lot of people, when those cases end up going to their doctors, and sometimes that is the need, but sometimes it's your mental health. You just don't eat anything, you're skipping meals, or you find yourself at midnight standing in front of your refrigerator eating everything out, or, you know, that Bluebell gallon that was meant for everybody is just now your gallon and you've eaten the whole thing. Or your clothes are a little looser, a little tight, and that wasn't planned, but you're noticing that something's off there. The other thing is your sleep and your energy. When you just don't have the energy to get out of bed, or it's either insomnia or hypersomnia. Either you're sleeping all the time, or you just can't relax enough to go to sleep. You find that you're experiencing daytime drowsiness, and you can't get to sleep at night because your mind is racing, or you're waking up really early, or you're waking up several times throughout the night. And of course, if you're not sleeping well, that affects your fatigue in the daytime, and so you're noticing that energy shift in your day. So I always say the change is the easiest thing. Look for the change. You know yourself, you know how much sleep you get, what your normal diet is, the things that you enjoy. When you see those things changing, that's the sign that maybe something else is changing, like your mental health. So what would I say about how you care for yourself? Here is my favorite thing to do. My favorite thing to do is my Southwest Airlines stewardess impression. If we were to lose cabin pressure and a mask were to drop from the ceiling, please put your mask on first, tighten it around you, and then help the people around you put their masks on. Basically, if you pass out on the plane, you can't help anyone else. That's what they're telling you. And so for us, our self-care is so important because if we don't care for ourselves, we don't have the energy, we can't care for other people. So what does that look like? That looks like us being intentional about the time that we spend doing things that we love, caring for ourselves, taking space away from the work that we're doing. I tell people if you're not doing at least 30 minutes a day of self-care, it will catch up with you. And that is the bare minimum. So if you're not doing that, the bare minimum, at some point you're gonna need way more than that because everything you're doing, that mental pressure, that physical pressure is going to catch up with you. Do things alone. I know that we like to be with one another, but one thing we have to learn is how to fulfill ourselves in a certain way. Because when we're with other people, we get joy from that, but what happens when you call someone and they're not there? Or when you need someone and they're not available? What is that thing that you have that you can do for yourself that you don't need anyone else to help you with? You don't need to rely on that other person, and do a little bit of that every day. Set boundaries. I do not do work on Sundays unless someone is in crisis, and it's my definition of what a crisis is. So that is my protector of my time, my mental health, and my physical health. I was just sharing with some people at the table that I'll be working until 8 o'clock tonight. When my athletes get out of practice, I'll be doing counseling with them until the evening. And that's what I love to do. But on Sundays, don't call me. And if you think you need to call me, still call the counseling center first, and then they'll call me if they need to. We often don't set those boundaries that we need in order to care for ourselves. And so make sure that you have boundaries set for yourselves when it comes to your ministry. I grew up United Methodist, and I knew that after Father's Day, I was not going to see our senior pastor until back to school bash. He took a sabbatical, and he took time to care for himself, and everyone in the congregation supported that, and I felt like he came back more rested and energized than definitely when he left. So making sure that we're taking that time for ourselves. One thing that I saw when I was researching the mental health of clergy is that you all take less than 3 days off a month. Less than 3 days off a month. Some of you are looking around like, really? Yes, you do. You take less than 3 days off a month. And some people are like, yeah, we do. You're not even getting the normal kind of weekend time for yourself. And those are for people that are working 40-hour work weeks that are getting at least 2 days off. And you all are on a 24/7 work schedule, and you're not taking more than 72 hours off during a month, and not a week, a month. So making sure that you are protecting that time. Finding support. I'm glad you all are doing this, because a part of that loneliness is the fact that other people don't understand what you do, but this room, there's an understanding, there's a camaraderie that happens here because you all know what it's like to be in your roles at your churches, and so you're able to lean on one another and find help and support in one another. One thing that we know about your mental health and about punishment, which is interesting. If you think about punishment over your lifetime, being separated from people is how we tend to punish people. Time out, detention, prison, even when you're in prison, isolation. Like there's something about us that we need to be connected to people, and when we're not, we don't function the same. So having the support and connection of one another is very important for our mental health. The other thing is knowing that sometimes you just need to seek mental health services. Sometimes you need to reach out to a counselor, and as much as we support one another, as much as I'm sure you've had pastoral care, that sometimes you need to be able to go to talk to someone who's an expert in this area. The benefit of that is multiple. One of the main benefits is that you can leave that there, the things that you can't often share with other people, that piece of confidentiality that you have within your job, you can give it to me, and then I can hold it confidential and probably go give it to my therapist. But, it's in this confidential space where you can get the help that you need. You can get the skills that you need to deal with anxiety or depression or whatever it is that you're experiencing. Mental health prevention is so much easier than mental health treatment. So when you're setting that time for yourself, when you are taking those vacation days off, when you are taking care of your physical health, when you are setting boundaries with the people around you, it is preventative. And then if that does not happen, or you get to a place where you're still experiencing mental health, please know that there are support in Waco, there are counselors, there are places that you can go to seek mental health services, because we don't want anyone to be in a situation where they feel like this is not something that I can reach out and get help for. I tell people, I spoke at No Need Among You conference a couple of years back, and I tell people, you know, as much as I'm a Christian and as much as I believe in the healing power of the Lord, if I am sick, I go to the doctor, and if I am struggling with my mental health, I go to my therapist. And sometimes I feel like we need that reminder, because we feel like we can do this on our own and on our own with the Lord, but think about the fact that so many people come to you because you are the place where they get the healing that the Lord has provided for them. And so sometimes we get what we need through other people, and so maybe that's a counselor. And so that's way past my time, but that is my message to you all today.